Anyways, let's continue with the next story then. The next chapter. Abbot Hugo's office. 15 minutes later. This is it, said Abbot Hugo. The result of his labour, allegedly written in the blood of the beast, though the use of its claw, which has disappeared, still unaccounted for. He stood away from his desk, allowing Brother Darius to view the manuscript. The grey monk cast his eye at the papers, then slowly withdrew a hand from his sleeves. He picked up the top page and sniffed it carefully. Have you read this? He quietly put the sheet aside. Abbot Hugo nodded. Our unworthy brother Bernard Augustus believes the story is a means for Brother Vincent to purge his emotions of a past relationship. The grey monk nodded and shifted his gaze across the room. Where is the claw? Bernard, sitting on a stool by the window, sat up slightly, popping his jaw. Answer him, Abbot Hugo commanded. I believe the dragon has it. By what means? I saw a scroll take it, Bernard said, flushing brightly and breaking sweat. The grey monk's stare was so invasive. His eyebrows, black and sharply arched, were like tunnels hiding heaven knew that. Were like tunnels hiding heaven knew what. Nonsense, Abbot Hugo snorted, blowing fiercely into a tissue. You expect us to believe that a rodent, a creature of low intelligence, broke into my drawer and removed the claw? He is telling the truth, Darius said darkly. The abbot's eyes swelled with disbelief. But that's preposterous! How can you— His speech was interrupted by a knock on the door. Yes, what is it? Brother Malcolm stepped in. Abbot, forgive the interruption, but I thought you ought to know that Brother Terence is running about the corridors, prattling wildly about his attack. He is saying he saw— An angel! Cried a voice, and in burst Brother Terence, eyes as large as hard-boiled eggs. He ran to Brother Bernard and clamped his hands, shaking them as though they were a cup of dice. An angel, brother! A dark-haired angel! He jumped towards the abbot. She appeared before my eyes! Restrain him! Cried the abbot, as Terence fell against him, clinging to his robe like a wild dog. I will deal with this, Brother Darius said, stopping Mother Malcolm before he could advance. He tapped Brother Terence lightly on the shoulder. As he turned, Brother Darius gripped his wrist and pulled it down as if striking a lever. Terence, swaying slightly, stared back mesmerized. You saw an angel, said Darius. Describe it to me. Hair, pined Terence, his pupils expanding. Hair as dark as a perfect night's. Wings, brother, beautiful wings. With a pained expression, he stretched out a hand. You tried to touch her? Terence nodded, helping a tear stream down his cheeks. I meant no harm at all, but the creature— He stood back. No! And then suddenly he was buckling up, covering his face. Brother Malcolm caught him around the midriff as he fell, and took him down to the safety of the floor. There! Snapped Bernard, rounding on the abbot. He was trying to touch an angel and the creature protected it. Doesn't that prove that— It was not an angel, Brother Darius cut in. Merely a spirit in the guise of a bird. Bird? Said Bernard. He searched the bald-headed face for more. On my walk here, I saw a raven, a bird often associated with portents and spirits. Is it friend or foe? Bernard gulped. That depends on which side you stand, said Darius. Oh, this is beyond me, the abbot blustered. Birds, squirrels, mystical scribblings. I applied to the elders for advice upon this creature, and the sooner it is done, the sooner my brethren can return to their sanity. Please, shall we go to the stables and finish this? No, said Brother Darius, gathering up his sleeves. First I will commingle with Brother Vincent. Commingle? Said the abbot. What kind of phrase is that? He means to mix, to share thoughts, Bernard muttered, trying to reason out why his head was suddenly so full of doubts about this monk. The abbot ran a troubled hand across his brow. Oh, very well, if you must, this way. A knock. Yet another monk appeared at the door, Brother Rufus striking a timid pose. Not now, said the abbot, sweeping past with Darius and Bernard close behind him. Brother Rufus bowed to him quite gratefully. He had been guarding the restless dragon when, of all things, the light bulb in the barn had blown with a pop that had showered the floors with heated glass, scaring him 9/10 out of his wits. It did not take a genius in electrical wiring to know right away that the cause was not simple wear and tear. He had tracked the problem to this piece of cable, taking from the base of the central support. He twisted it once or twice in his hand. Teeth. One could see the indentations. Sharp teeth gnawing through the plastic sheathing. Annoying, but what was done was done. He had better light a lantern and return to his duties. Teeth. Yes. Probably a rat. Abbot Hugo's office 90 seconds later. It was a nuisance, but it had its worth sometimes. He had bought it to record important messages when he was away at prayer. It would cut in after just 4 rings. The manual had instruction on how to change that, but manuals irritated Abbot Hugo almost as much as telephones themselves. That day, when it cut in, a woman left a message. In a clear but troubled voice, she said, "My name is Elizabeth Pennycettle. I wish to leave an urgent message for a student called David Rain, who I believe may be with you any moment now. Please tell him to call me or come straight home. It's very important. I believe he's in serious danger. And if a monk called Brother Arthur is among you, please tell him I never really went away." Stable block barn, same time. This is the next chapter. We literally this was literally 1 page, not even 1 page of a chapter. But yes, we skipped it. We literally read this chapter and went to the next one. A tearing. He thought he heard a tearing sound. A crack, not unlike the sharp snap of cardboard when the staples are torn from the walls of a box. Coming, he thought, from the dragon pen. Snap! Yes, there it was again. He tilted the lantern, swinging amber light deeper into the barn. The hooded creature was half in shadow, but half was all that Brother Rufus needed to see. A wing. Heaven help us, a wing extending. The mailing tape ripped through, torn along the ventral line of the chest. As the full extent of his horror gelled, the dragon struck out fitfully, crushing the wing into the stack of hay bales. The wire binding them was sliced in an instant, severed so fiercely, the ends coiled into zinging pigtails. The dry air filled with flying grass seed, topped by the dragon's unearthly squeal. Brother Rufus threw his lantern aside, bolted for the courtyard, and screamed for help. The dragon, Grockle, still growing in strength, yanked on his neck chain, straining it taut. On the 3rd time he did this, he caused a small movement in the purling above. The ancient timber, stout but riddled with wood-boring insects, cracked at its center and pulled into a V. With another wild tug, the purlin snapped and the chain flew clear, lashing its captive with a clatter of steel. Rafters creaked. A rotted timber fell, shattering on the anvil of the cobbled floor. Near to it burned the abandoned lantern, its yellow light flaring as the oil it drew upon spilled from its well. Though unsafe, there was no real danger of combustion. The lamp lay on stone, with little loose straw around it. It would take a deliberate act of arson to cause a blaze of unstoppable proportions. But that was precisely what was in Brother Vincent's mind. The squirrel had done him such good service. Now it would undertake one last mission. Drag the lantern into the straw and set the stable block alight. Then would come the final proof that the dragon Grockle was a saviour to them all. Lying out in his state of heightened consciousness, he pictured the squirrel clamping its teeth around the lantern top. But it was hot, and the little creature squeaked and jumped back. The lid of the lantern, loosened by the bite, fell away slightly from its glass walls. A naked tongue of flame poked out. Vincent's eyeballs flickered under their lids. Another way. He must find another way. This thought line was too ambitious for the squirrel. Perhaps if it laid a bridge of straw between the hay bales and the "Wake!" The word fell into his mind like a pebble breaking the waters of perception. The squirrel, the dragon, all disappeared, replaced by a rushing sense of fear. "Wake!" the voice commanded again. A concentrated force of heat above his eyes. When he opened them, he felt a hand on his forehead and stared up into the face of death. Its colorless mouth gave a smug little twitch. "It's over, brother," the thin lips said. Erasure, darkness, the blades of wickedness cutting and stirring his memories into sludge. Brother Vincent, physicist, monk, cried out and clutched at the corners of his mind, as voices elsewhere were shouting for sanctuary. "The dragon is empowered and breaking loose! God in his mercy save us all!" But the loudest shout of all was that of Brother Peter, scorning of body, burling of lung. "Fire! Fire in the stable! Fire!" Brother Darius, hearing it, snatched away his hand. He scowled at Brother Vincent as though the man had outwitted him. "Fire?" called the abbot, hurrying out of the cell. Brother Bernard rushed to Brother Vincent's side. He pored over the body, feeling for a pulse. "Is he revived?" "He is empty. No longer any threat." "Threat to whom?" "Fire! Fire!" "Lead me to this hybrid dragon." "What are you?" said Bernard, standing in his path. "What have you done to this man?" In a move so swift Bernard didn't see it happen, Darius clamped a hand across the fat monk's forehead. "Well, well, even you have been an instrument in this comedy." Grimacing, Bernard sank to his knees. "Now," said Darius, leaving him gasping, "now the finale begins." By the time Brother Bernard had regained his senses, the barn in which the baby dragon had been chained and was already a mass of crackling flame, he arrived to see the cinders spitting high into the air, and smoke, coaxed by the falling drizzle, winding eastward toward the sea. The larger outer wall was standing proud, charring rapidly at its base. But the lower one closest to the monastery itself had begun to fall inward, drawing down the roof. It was here that the abbot had positioned the brethren, with long poles, planking, anything they could find with which to push the wall in farther, to foil any chance of the fire migrating. With a grinding crack, a row of panels went over, rafters buckled, the roof caved in. The stench of melting roofing tarred the air. A great crown of debris, sparks and ash, erupted from the ground and blew back in a cluster. Several brothers cried out or dropped to their knees as the embers caught on their clothing and skin. But in contrast to the wretched, piercing screeches issuing from the burning pyramid of wood, their shouts were merely whispers on a distant wind. Bernard's stomach squeezed itself like a sponge. The creature, the dragon, was trapped in the blaze. How was this started? He cried, falling down. He looked through the smoke at the blackened faces. Brother Malcolm was tottering, exhausted through the debris. He was covering his ears to block out the screeches. Who started this? Bernard shouted again. He struggled up and pulled Brother Malcolm around. Who set it on fire? He shook the man hard. It was escaping, Malcolm mumbled. There was a lantern. Brother, what have I done? Pray for it, said Bernard, making Malcolm kneel. Pray for it, he screamed, running to the others, purging them with swipes of an illusory stick. It feels pain. It cries out. It has a soul. Pray. And one by one, each brother, including the dazed and the spectacled Abbot Hugo, settled to his knees and began to beseech his heavenly Father to send this creature to a better place. Only one, Brother Darius, did not join in. He was looking back in an impossible distance, beyond the gardens and the rowan trees, toward the jetty where another small boat had just docked a passenger. A young man, a civilian, was sprinting along the stage, clearly heading for the source of the blaze. Brother Darius turned his face to the sky, the color blue running through his sharp grey eyes. There, a far greater distance away, the FireStar was starting to reach its zenith. Less than a day before the portal opened fully, he returned his gaze to the dragon and the monks. With a sudden inward rush of air, the fire consuming the barn went out. A startled gasp cut short the prayers. The brethren looked to one another for guidance. A wisp or two of smoke twizzled out of the pyre. Blistered, shriveled relics of timber cracked and shifted, finding new levels. The shoulder of the dragon poked through the mess, bloodless, grey, like solid stone. Then, as the rain increased a little, and the dying wood hissed, and the earth around it fizzed, a shade of green rose through the dragon's shoulder, forming into a pattern of scales. A breath of movement rippled the wood. Then the mighty wings came out. Fragments, some as large as untouched rafters, flew out sideways in both directions. What did not strike the flesh of human skin, splintered windows, charcoaled walls, or simply came to rest in the open fields. The dragon rose. Its body, flushed with its newborn energy, grew in girth again by the length of a scale. The manacles around its feet and neck burst like useless paper hoops. Brother Bernard, one of the few uninjured, watched it shake away the last flake of wreckage and turn its eyes on the screaming humans. Please, he begged. We only want to help you. The dragon snorted a sulphurous blast, powerful enough to knock Bernard over. Don't hurt me, he begged, scrambling in the dirt. God have mercy, please don't hurt me. The eyes slid, the wings gyred. The creature head back roared at the rain, and where there had once been water, there was steam. Grockle! Cried a voice. Grockle, it's me! But by then the young dragon had taken to the sky, and the only further signs of fire after that were those short blasts flowing out of its throat as it banked instinctively toward the north. That's the end of that chapter. God damn it, David. Too late. Ay. Come on, drink. Please don't tip over, because I need you while I'm reading the book. David and Darius is the next chapter. Arthur! Which of you is Arthur? The young man, David Rain, skidded to a halt, squinting through the smoke at the bodies and the wreckage. Help me! Croaked a voice nearby. Brother Cedric, blood pouring from a wound to his ear, gripped David's knee with the strength of a monkey. David knelt and tore the sleeve of Cedric's habit, using the cloth as a makeshift pad. "What happened here?" he asked, laying Cedric down with his palm holding the bandage in place. But Cedric, delirious with pain and dread, could only gaze at the sky and burble, "God bless you." David left him and ran towards Brother Ferdinand, who was limping to the aid of Abbot Hugo and others. "Please, help me. I must find Brother Arthur." Ferdinand, his long chin blackened by smoke, shook his head and almost fell. "No one here goes by that name." David blew a raindrop off his nose. "One of you must know." Suddenly, he felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned to see a smaller, tubbier monk. Are you David?" "Yes." Brother Bernard closed his eyes and almost wept. He interlaced his fingers and bit a knuckle. "Then everything Arthur told me is true." David put a hand out to stop the man shaking. "Where is he?" "Come, I will take you to him." "You will not," said a voice. Standing in the smoke was a bald-headed man, his hands resting in the sleeves of his habit. "Who are you?" said David, aware that Brother Bernard was melting away as though to clear the ground for some kind of duel. "You command the clay figures," Darius said. "You are a friend of dragons." David looked the man up and down. "You're Fane," he whispered, but nothing like the one Gareth had brought back. An overwhelming aura of deep malevolence surrounded this man, this shell of a man perhaps. Then came another shock. From out of his cowl, a small figure fluttered into the air. David gave a start of recognition. "Gretel? What's she—" He stopped himself. "You've been to the house." Gretel, annoyed that he'd spoken out, flicked her tail and waved a paw across her mouth. Darius took a step forward. David instinctively took a step back, a long cold horror seeping through him. "If you've hurt Liz or the dragons, I'll kill you." "You're not capable," Darius snarled. "Nothing on this torpid planet could move at the same vibration as the Fane." "And why are you here?" David asked it, suddenly aware that he had not been deserted after all. Bernard had circled around behind the grey monk and was picking up a heavy piece of wood from the pyre. "To cleanse this world of dragons." "Why? When they're dying out on your homeworld?" The human lips puckered into a smile. "You have been making connections, human." David shrugged the wet hair off his forehead. "I've got powerful connections, trust me." Darius advanced again. "The shaman bear and the sibyl I have dealt with? All that remains are you, the clay creatures, and the hybrid dragon." David glanced into the sky. There was no sign of Grockle. "Why didn't you kill him while you had the chance?" "The hybrid will go to the island," said Darius. "When the portal opens, he will call all dragonkind to his side. There is a pure fire hidden somewhere in the north. Its reading is diffuse, but the hybrid will find it." David leveled his gaze. "I wouldn't bank on it." For a small man, Bernard had remarkable strength. Though the skin of his palms was blistering with the heat, he brought a burned rafter down with such crushing force on the grey monk's head that the man appeared to be driven slightly into the ground. As he buckled, Bernard roared and swung at him again. Darius went over and fell, mouth open, hard to the cobbles. Gretel immediately flew to David and pushed her flowers right under his nose. She went. "Don't argue, just sniff." David took in the scent and staggered back, blinking. "Evil!" Bernard panted, shedding tears of despair, crying out as if confession was all that was left to him. He threw the murderous rafter aside. "I felt it in his touch. He damaged Arthur. Come, I will take you to his cell." But then it was David who was crying out suddenly. He dropped to his knees, pitching forward. "What ails you?" said Bernard, reaching out, and was immediately thrown aside by a force which left him crawling on his back. David scraped at the weeds between the cobbles. The world pulsed and came back tainted blue. The Fane was inside him, seeking knowledge. The clay figures. Why were you chosen as their master? A trail of vomit left David's mouth. What do you know about the dragon made stone? His eardrums buzzed. His brain would not respond. You are unclear, the Fane said irritably. Blankness. Tumbleweed blowing through his head. A bear, it said. I read an image of a bear with a sacred tooth. This is your primary connection? A fable? David's mind was empty of answers. Where is the tear of the dragon going? Lurching forward, he vomited again. You are trivial, said the Fane. Unimportant. And it left him, and returned to its previous host. As if he had not had to witness enough, Brother Bernard was now about to face the horror of what he thought was a dead man rising. I am leaving, said Darius, slurring the words. Within the deeply cracked skull, the brain was hemorrhaging and barely functional, but there was still enough Oma present in the body for the Fane to regenerate its energies for travel. The man, who had once been Brother Darius, shimmered, turned grey, then dropped again, this time never to recover. Bernard let out an anguished cry. Don't worry. It's gone, David said. Dizzily, he got to his feet, wet stains marking both knees of his jeans. The man you think you killed was already effectively dead, possessed and stripped by an alien life form called the Fane. Bernard put his fingertips against his temples, as though his head might fall apart at any moment. He was about to say, aliens? When he jumped back again, startled at the sight of a dragon appearing in David's hands. This is Gretel, David said. She was made by a woman called Elizabeth Pennycattle, who Arthur was in love with once. He still is, said Bernard, looking pained. David nodded and stroked Gretel's wing. She just saved my life. She gave me a potion that stopped my mind being read by the Fane. But she can move. You won't see her in her animated form, only when she's solid like this. We talk, too. And he asked Gretel what had happened at the house. She told him quickly, explaining how she had led the Fane away before it could hurt Liz any more. David gently kissed her head. Go. Find more flowers, he whispered, and threw her upward into the rain. He turned to an open-mouthed Brother Bernard. I need to follow the Fane to the Arctic. The Arctic? From here? David, it's impossible. Take me to Arthur. He'll know what to do. Bernard gave an anxious gulp. Brother Vincent. Arthur was laid low by Darius. Low? Insensible. As if in a coma. David closed his eyes and gave a sigh of defeat. It was short-lived, broken by a from Gretel. She buzzed past his ear, drawing his attention to a shimmering in the air. David put out his hand again, and this time it was the dragon Groin who materialized into it. Now we finish part 3. We're now at part 4. And I swear today's is only maybe 2 or 3 chapters. My God. Let me take a sip. Right, part 4. Tooth of Ragnar, February 14th, Valentine's Day. Lucy had always been a late sleeper, but even she knew that her current quote-unquote nap was far more extended than a Sunday morning rest. She opened her eyes, in complete darkness, immediately aware of something warm and extremely large lying beside her. Her underfed stomach at once tried to retch as the stench of animal sweat and feces entered her cold but sensitive nostrils. The movement made it shuffle a pole. Lucy yelped and paddled her feet. In turn, the bear growled and lifted its head. "Are you him?" Lucy chattered. "The bear who came before?" She crossed her fingers and shut her eyes tight. It made no difference at all to her vision, but she felt a little safer for it. The bear slid away from her and rocked to its feet. Another winter through. More ice in her joints. Alive but groggy, she yawned at death. "Help!" said Lucy, whimpering a little. She coiled up, fearing she might be trampled. But the mother bear, used to dealing with young, lowered her snout and nudged her aside, then turned her face to the bitter draught of air flowing down the tunnel. Snow lay thick on the mountainside, with ice beginning to think about melting, air looking for a warming sun. She could scent the end of winter approaching. But above all this, she could scent male bears. They were commonplace, of course, but never in this quantity. Every male from the western runs must have descended on the island. Either that or her old snout was playing tricks on her. Or death had yawned at her instead. No, the child was real. She remembered her sleeping on the floor of the cave, a trace of Sunasala on her furless skin. Were the bears here for the child, perhaps? Was she a wonder? A spirit among men? She shook herself down and snorted at the tunnel. Whatever the answer, she had made a pledge, and she would do exactly what she always did. Go outside. Make herself known to the ice. Check conditions. Protect her young, even this girl, to the point of death. Lord, there are 2 humans approaching. Ingvar tipped his snout to the wind. From which direction? South and west of the island, where the ice is clear of ridges. Ingvar let his steady gaze roll, then squinted back at the tooth of Ragnar. It was magnificent, he thought, black against the moody reflections of the ice, its hollows tinted yellow by the light of the star, layers of purple-grey sky above it. Ragnar's island, Sunasala's denning place, his heritage. Is one of them the girl we spared? We cannot tell. Ingvar focused on the end of his snout. Find them. Surround them. Stop their progress. The bear dipped his head in salute. Wait, is the pack in place? They are situated evenly around the island. If the creature appears, we are ready to attack. There is still no scent of the Lord Thoran. Do you wish me to send a party in search of him? Ingvar ground his lower jaw, feeling for the tooth of his ancestor Ragnar. This was a mystery he could not fathom. Where was the creaky, star-seeking teller? He looked back high above his shoulder where the star he had been following for so long now was shaping a strange void out of the darkness. Thoran will find his own way, he said, hoping that his words showed no imbalance between optimism and fear. Be prepared. The bear bowed and was ready to sweep away when he turned again and said, Oh, there is a female denning on the island. She was just seen at the lip of a cave. A muscle twitched above Ingvar's eye. Were there young? We have no scent of any. Ingvar puffed his chest. She will be greatly troubled by our presence. If she brings out cubs, they are not to be harmed. Chase her and her young away if you can. Calm the dogs, snapped Zana. Calm the dogs. You won't get hurt if you just stand still. Tutega said, Nanook is all around us. I pray they eat you first. You know, for a hunter you're such a bore. Despite his terror, the Inuk said, What does this mean, bore? I rest my case, Zana said. Shoot nothing, let me do the talking. She took off her mittens and flipped back her hood. With one shake of her head, her black hair, still festooned with charms, fell out across the shoulders of her furs. Ordering the dogs to stop their yapping, she set off toward the nearest bear. Hi-ya, wailed Tutega. Shut up, she said, or you and that sled go down an icy hole. 30 paces from the bear, she stopped and pointed to the space between them. The bear looked down and saw the mark of Umara burnt into the ice. Instantly, he lay down in front of her. Around the circle, every bear did the same. I am Xana, she said, daughter of Gwendolyn, Sibyl of the North, defender of the ice. Like you, I am here to protect the island. Okay, that's the speech. Now, one of you stand up and take me to Ingevar. Excuse me? Please don't growl, but... The bear swung around and snorted in surprise. Went Lucy, jumping to attention with her arms squeezed tightly by her sides. I'm just hungry, and I need to stretch my legs. And use the bathroom? The mother bear squinted. Oh, Lucy wailed. You're not him, are you? You don't understand anything I say. The female snorted again and peered back at the open cave mouth. What was this man-child thinking of? There were more males roaming than claws on her feet. If this girl was scented, they might attack. Can I look? Said Lucy, cupping her eyes, even though the light outside was a little bit brighter than it was in the cave. She could make out the color yellow, she thought, and remembered the star she had seen before she slept. She edged forward. Went the bear, forcing her back. All right, I'll stay in the cave. Where's Gwilana? You haven't eaten her, have you? You didn't have a raven for breakfast once? I think that's roof. Do bears roof? Because apparently that's the effect. Roof. That's what is written here. Lucy dropped her shoulders. No Gwilana. That was a worry. Around and about them, the body of the island rumbled gently. Lucy touched the wall and said hello to Gawain, then drew the isocycle of her pocket, where she'd place it for safekeeping while she climbed the tunnel. This is part of him, she said, and held the piece up for the bear to see. One loose ray of starlight made it glint. And somewhere in the distance, a creature called. Lucy Pennykettle's jaw dropped open. That was a dragon, she said. The shoulder wound no longer ached, but sitting occasionally made Ingevar stiff. He was standing up, stretching and turning a circle when he heard the same call that Lucy had picked up from the cave. Far away, he saw a terrible shape in the sky. A great bird, that was how Thorin had said it would look, was approaching across the expanse of sea ice. He could see its long wings beating in the half-light, whipping it on toward the island. To his left, he heard a bear give an open-throated growl, carrying the warning out to the pack. But why was the bird in open sky and not rising from stone as Thorin had suggested? What was happening here? With a whoosh that drove an ice cloud up into his face, the dragon swept over Ingevar's head, circled the island, and landed on the very tip of the tooth. "Ah!" it cried, mantling its wings and jerking its head up and down, up and down. The ice around Ingevar seemed to respond with a mighty lament, as if it was making a humble petition to be known to the creature or remembered by it. He looked back quickly at the star. Its beam, though short of its highest point, was weaving something out of the darkness. A tunnel of light was beginning to form. Grockle! It's Grockle! Xana gasped. Tutega sank to his knees. Bears all around. Now demons in the sky. Only death could be at the end of this. The bears quickly reviewed the orders. 5 turned left toward the island. 1 remained as escort for the travelers. Where are they going? Xana demanded. Take stand, said the bear in his stilted tongue. If creature come to the ice, we kill it. By whose orders? Lord Ingevar. What? Xana turned on her heels, looking north for any sight of him. Ingevar wants to kill the dragon? The ice bear flexed its claws. Something's wrong here, Xana breathed. Something's way out of place. Where's Gwilana? Have you seen another Sibyl like me? The bear shook his head. Any men? Eunuch with hair like a bear? The bear blinked and blew a cloud of vapor. Walk. I take you to Ingvar. Zana stared into his almond eyes. No, Nanook, you obey me now. She kicked Tutega. Pass me the binoculars. Tutega put them into her hands. Turning the sights, she focused on Grockle, watching his talons raking the snow. She dropped the elevation and focused again. Oh my god! She gasped. What do you see? Said Tutega. A cave mouth, a bear, and a red-haired child. Oh, sorry. What do you see? Said Tutega. A cave mouth, a bear, and a red-haired child. Lucy! Said Zana. Lucy's here. Take a sip. It's going from one to the next. Jesus Christ. It's jumping so much, and I have to keep track of where everything is going right now. Ingvar sensed a movement behind him. Thoran, he grunted, for the shift in pressure felt like the way a teller or a spirit bear might approach. But that which closed on him was not a bear. The Fane invaded his wounded leg and flowed on up through his shoulder and neck. Roaring, he leaped back the moment he felt it, taking all four paws clean off the ice. You cannot resist, the Fane said in thought. Ingvar backed up, pounding the ice, thrashing his head from side to side until the muscles of his neck were loose and raw. We are allies, said the Fane. You plan to kill the dragon. Ingvar roared again and pulled his ear. You are strong, but you cannot break free of me, bear. What are you? Growled Ingvar, looking for water, hoping to see some sign of his being. I am Fane, he had said, and I am tired of this heavy, ponderous world. And it concentrated half its energy flow into Ingvar's lower gum. With a grinding twist, it forced out the tooth which Ragnar had lost so long ago. It bounced once between Ingvar's paws, staining the sea ice red where it fell. This island was raised by force, said the Fane. You by force will lower it again. And it lifted Ingvar to stand on his hind legs and brought his full weight down to crush the tooth. The ice zinged and a running fissure appeared, snaking fast toward the island. At the interface of ice and rock there was a boom. The island shook, torpedoed lobe down. Snow fell in slabs. Jesus Christ, sorry. Snow fell in slabs from its western face. A plangent shockwave travelled out in all directions, causing splits and disruptions in the land-fast ice. When Ingvar looked up to see what he had done, the base of the island was spreading apart and the first splinters were showing higher up the cliff face. The dragon Gawain is broken, said the voice. Now we remove the hybrid as well. Lucy screamed and screamed. What's happening? What's happening? Another shower of rocks hit the floor of the cave, and this time the ground beneath them fractured. For the second time, she was thrown off her feet. There was wetness on her elbow, and she knew she was bleeding. Clutching it, she tried to squirm towards the cave mouth, barely visible because of the dust. The island rumbled, and she heard a great crack, and the whole world seemed to lurch to one side. Lucy, along with the rest of the debris, found herself piled up against a wall that itself was in danger of tearing apart. Gawain, help me! She cried in dragon tongue, but it was the female polar bear who came to her aid. Frightened by the sudden noise of the explosion, she had lost her footing just outside the cave and tumbled several yards with a torrent of snow. When her slide had stopped, she looked up to see the island breaking apart, loosing rocks like a bird shedding feathers. The girl! She scrambled back to the cave, loping inside. She scented Lucy and dragged her out by the folds of her clothing. In the open, She almost lost her to another slide of snow when the clothing ripped and they were separated briefly. But Lucy, clever and aware of the danger, rolled herself into the mother's flank and pulled herself onto the ice bear's back. "Gawain is waking up!" But the truth of it was, Gawain, like the island his body was a part of, was slowly crumbling into the sea. "Change of plan," said Zana, pulling the binoculars away from her eyes and thrusting them into Tega's hands. "See that big bear dead ahead?" She pointed in the direction of Ingvar. "Quickly!" He looked. "Male bear, I see." Zana took the binoculars back. "That's the one we saved in Chamberlain. He's attacking my dragon and destroying the island. Something's gone horribly wrong here, Inuk, and you and I might be the only ones to right it." "Where's David? You said David come." Zana tightened her lip. "David's probably dead," she said quietly. She pulled the rifle out of the sled. "This time, don't miss, okay?" With an anguished cry, Gruckle spread his wings. The perch beneath him rumbled and sheared away, then fell clear of his grasping feet. As he hovered, he saw the entire island collapse. First the basal layers disappearing, spilling waves of water across the ice. Then, as the middle strata came down, the whole substance of the apex crumbled inward, disintegrating into a well of rubble. And there among the falling chunks of stone were legs and wings, and lastly an eye. A petrified eye was the last Gruckle saw of his father, Gawain, before the surging water took him. Immediately he let forth a belt of fire that lit a candle all over the north, a personal aurora to his father's memory, and a sign to his aggressor that revenge would be sought. His yellow eye looked at the fissure in the ice, and followed it back to where the bear that had created it arrogantly sat. With a whoop of his wings, Gruckle dipped and joined the end of that watery runway. Ice chunks crashed and pulverized below him as waves, displaced by the island submerging, spread their energy across the ice shelf. He opened his mouth and flamed it all, creating a spectacular channel of fire that the water hadn't doused by the time he had set the bear alight. He watched it turn from white to black, saw the fur and blubber melt back to the muscle burning along with the bone. Its ashes fell into the Arctic Ocean, and where they floated, he flamed them too. He came down on an ice floe and cried at the sky, not knowing that the enemy he thought he destroyed was now about to turn its attention to him. Tega had faced many dangers in the north, but none so strange as this. His sled, his dogs, had all been drowned by the tidal wave flowing out from the island, a wave that would have taken him as well. But for the good fortune of stepping the right way across a cracking floe and not into the fire this monster had created. And now here it was, barely paces distant. The two of them, alone on a raft of ice, floating aimlessly out to sea. Its nostrils twitched as it turned to him, and he could see in its monstrous yellow eye that it was suffering. He knew how that felt. His life, his beliefs were as much at sea as this piece of faltering ice. He was tired, and about to be turned to ash if this creature's killing wasn't done with yet. That was no way for an Inuk to die. He had the rifle in his hands. He laid it at his feet. What use were bullets now? He turned to the water to be with his dogs. That was when the Fane came into him. In an instant it learned of its intent, stayed his action, and turned him around. "Pick up the weapon," it said. And the hunter that had once been the Inuk to Tega prepared to put a bullet through a dragon's skull. It was the easiest of targets, for the unsuspecting dragon had twisted its head, seduced by the glow falling out of the sky. It amused the Fane that it should happen this way. With with metal poisoning the dragon's dull brain. Its death would be the worst of slow vibrations, a fitting punishment for its failure to lead him to the fire of Gawain. It queered, awed by the sparkling tunnel of light. It gyred its leathery wings toward it, sensing that a better world was close. "Shoot," said the Thane. "Let it be ended." Tega's finger squeezed the trigger. Lucy had been lucky. Polar bears, as she soon discovered, were wonderful swimmers. The mother bear had hardly put a paw out of place as she hurried away from the dying island and plunged into the ice-cold waters of the Arctic. She had swum because her life depended on it, and the life of this precious child. Just how precious she was soon to discover. As they bobbed along with the outflowing tide, the girl suddenly sat up and tugged at her neck, clearly trying to make her change her course. She heard voices, human and polar bear, and altered the shape of her swimming stroke to bring herself in line with them. The girl was suddenly hauled off her back, and there on the ice stood another, older girl, surrounded by a group of male bears. "Zana!" Lucy cried. Zana pulled her in close. "This is crazy! What are you doing here? And look at your hair, it's blazing red!" "Gwilana brought me." "Gwilana? Where is she?" "I don't know. And I'm really, really cold." "Warm her," said Zana to one of the males, as Lucy fell exhausted to the ice. The bear lay down and gathered her in, aided by the female who by now had dragged herself out of the water. Suddenly a bear barked. "Creature, it come!" And all of them turned to see Grockle's attack. "He kill Ingavar," said one, running farther up the ice. Zana shook her head. "That can't be Ingavar." The bears, 5 in all, exchanged angry glances. Ingavar would not destroy the islands. Ingavar would not destroy the island, Zana told them. "Bad spirits are working here." "You, Sybil, make magic," the largest bear said, "or we attack creature." Zana crouched beside Lucy and gripped her hand. "Gwilana must have brought you here to raise Gawain, Lucy. How is the star involved in it?" "I don't know," said Lucy, "but—" "Enoch," said a bear. "Enoch with creature." Zana raised her binoculars. To Tega, with a gun. Grockle, distressed. The situation didn't look good. "What, Luce? Hurry!" I saw a drawing in the cave of a tunnel in the sky, and people going up it, and a dragon at the top, and I found this." She handed Zana the isocycle. "Gawain!" Zana gasped, and in a microsecond she connected with Grockle and knew exactly what he must do. "Fly!" she called out to him. "Fly to the light!" And gripping Lucy tight, she called on the spirit of Gwendolen to aid him. A gunshot ripped through the air, but the dragon, Grockle, had already moved. The moment he entered the circle of light, he was gone, transported to the world of the Fane. "We did it," said Zana. "We saved him, Luce." But where's he gone?" she said. "And, look!" She pointed urgently across the ice. Another figure had appeared beside Tega. It was David Rain. "You know, I preferred you as an evil monk. Would have made killing you a whole lot easier." The Fane swung around, hardly able to believe what was happening. The hybrid gone, and now this irritating human present. "You? How?" "Told you. I've got connections," said David. In his right hand he held the Inuit talisman. A few hours gathering flowers around the abbey, and Gretel was able to restore some of Arthur's vital memory. He told me how to use the shaman bear's talisman to physically travel through space and time, instead of just dreaming it like I'd done before. He opened his hand and let Groin fly free. "Go to Lucy, take her home." "Your creations will all die with you," said the Fane, and thought about using the rifle again, but grunted scornfully and threw it aside. The gun slithered across the ice and dropped into the sea. David's attention was briefly caught by movement in the water farther behind him. Zana was arriving on the back of a bear. He had to make this fast. "You failed," he said. "My connection will put Gawain back together and send him through the portal, along with the one you called the hybrid. Irks you, doesn't it? To see a healthy dragon in the dark matter plane? A dragon untainted by the virus you've been spreading to wipe them out." The fingers of Tatega rolled into a fist. He knelt down and picked up a loose scrap of ice. "How did you find this connection?" "Commingling is a two-way process," said David. "It's amazing what you learn from the young of your species who want nothing more than to praise Godeth." "Die," said Tatega, and threw the ice. In mid-air, it changed to a pointed spear, piercing the center of David's chest. David cried out and dropped to his knees, his left hand clasping that portion of the ice still sitting proud above his chest. "It will be slow," said Tatega, throwing another. Its point sank into David's heart. "The ice will stop your human blood and freeze you to death from the inside out." "No," said David, reeling slightly. "I am never wrong," the Thane said back. "The ice will transform me," David breathed. "You're the one who's going to die." "Nothing on this world can touch me, human." "I'm not thinking of this world," said David. His head fell low. In his mind's eye, he turned for what he knew could be the last time to his beloved writing dragon. "Are you sure?" he asked. On his pad, Gazooks wrote down the word, Icefire. "So be it." "You've been seeking the fire of Gawain," said David. "Where is it? Speak, and I will kill you quicker." "You're standing on it." "The ice is his fire tear, and that's what's seeping into my blood." Puzzled, Tatega looked about him. The ice rocked. The ocean rippled. A strange dark wind began to blow. For the first time in its life, the Thane felt cold. "I was sworn to secrecy," David said, giving out a little breath of discomfort. "If I speak of the fire, in the presence of the tooth, the spirit of Ragnar will be at my shoulder." He stared into the absent hooded eyes. "Say hello to Ingevar. I think you've already met." As Tatega turned, a spirit paw punched through the center of his chest and tore out the Thane, striking it dead. The body that had once been the hunter Tatega fell to the ice in a lifeless heap. The spirit of Ingevar raised its paw again and drew 3 short lines in the dead man's head. A hole opened in the ice beneath the corpse, and Tatega joined his dogs in spirit. "David! David!" Then it was Xana, scrambling headlong across the ice. She dropped to her knees to cradle his head. "Hi," he said, having difficulty swallowing. "Guess, this means you're back on again." "Why?" she said quietly, swaying over him. "Why did you have to do it?" He lifted a hand and played with her hair, amused by the number of Inuit charms. "Got your feather. It's under my pillow." Don't do this," she sobbed. "I don't want to lose you." He swallowed again and looked up into her face. "Your eyes, they're so beautiful. Please, don't cry." "David, don't! Stay with me," she begged. The ice rocked. 3 bears, maybe 4, had climbed onto the floe. David ran his fingertips over his lips and pressed them onto her cold white cheek. "Know what day it is?" She sniffed and shook her head. "Valentine's. Don't suppose you sent me a card?" She shook her head again. "Missed the mail?" No problem. Put out your hand." She leveled it for him, and gathering his own hands together in a circle, he placed an invisible gift in her palm. "What is it?" she said, trying hard not to cry. "A Valentine dragon. Anonymous, of course." She laughed and pulled her hair away from her mouth. "What's its name?" He blinked once and touched her face again. "It'll come to you," he said. Then his eyes closed slowly, and his head fell into the crook of her arm. "No!" she wailed, and pulled him to her. "Stay with me, please! Stay with me!" One of the bears gave a gentle snort. There were 4 on the floe, laying down together. Farther out on other floes she could see more. At David's feet sat the spirit of Ingvar. "Not yet! I want to hold him," she said. And they waited, heads bowed, until she was ready to lay David down and move aside. Only then did she tell them, "Do what you must." The spirit of Ingvar set himself down at David's shoulder. One by one, the 4 bears stood, north, south, east, and west. On a signal, they rose together and pounded the ice in unison. The peace holding David and Ingvar broke and committed them both to the lapping water. "My love," said Zana, and looked into the sky. In the heavens, the FireStar went out. Epilogue. Wayward Crescent, 3 days later. Charming! That was the word that leaped to mind as soon as Bernard stepped out of the taxi. Despite the rain, the Crescent had a wonderful welcoming feel. He knew his decision to come here was right. He paid the driver and picked up his only pieces of luggage, a small bag containing his personal effects and a coverage birdcage that Brother Peter's budgerigar had once occupied, home now to a restless grey squirrel. Number 42. After all he had witnessed on the island, this in some ways was the strangest sight of all. Here there be dragons, he thought. He smiled inwardly and walked down the path. The door opened before he could touch the bell. And there she was, Mrs. Pennycettle, Arthur's love, green eyes and flowing red hair, Elizabeth. "Hello, I am Brother Bernard Augustus," he said, and shook her hand formally, knowing no better approach. She smiled warmly and invited him in. "And this must be Lucy," he said. The girl was incredible, almost a carbon copy of her mother. Lucy's sparkling eyes went straight to the cage. "You've brought him!" she said, hunkering down and lifting the cover. "Tchuk!" went the squirrel, making everyone laugh. "Please, come through," Liz said politely, directing Bernard toward the kitchen. "Mom," Lucy said, blocking his way, "shouldn't you tell him about—" "Oh, yes," Liz said, clapping her hand at her breast. "I must warn you about our cat." "Do you like them?" asked Lucy. "Very much," said Bernard. "What breed is it?" Lucy wiggled her nose. "Well, he's just a plain brown tabby," said Liz. "Sometimes." "Sometimes?" "Cup of tea?" she said brightly, and bundled him down the hall. On the kitchen table were 3 or 4 clay figures. Bernard put the bird cage beside a cat bowl, which seemed to be filled with slices of raw meat. He shook his head and pointed to the dragons. "Your sculptures. I met one on the island." "Gretel, yes. She's with her mistress, Anna. David's partner." She and Lucy both looked away a moment. Bernard bent forward with his hand on his knees. "And these beings, they move?" Not that you would notice," Liz said. Lucy stepped forward to introduce them. "This is Gazooks, and this is Gareth, and this is Golly, the healing dragon. He's mending Gruffin." "They have medical skills?" Bernard stepped back in amazement. "Spiritual would be a better Spiritual would be a better word," Liz said. "Please, sit down." She put a plate of cookies in front of the monk, which Bernard took to with great delight. "I have seen so many strange things," he said. The events on the island have opened our eyes to aspects of our faith we never thought existed." Liz filled his china cup with tea. "Yes, I wanted to ask about that. Will the events be spoken of beyond the island?" Bernard shook his head, spilling crumbs down his habit. As historian to the brethren, it's my duty to record what happened, but I assure you the documents will be filed away safely. And oh, what was that? He paused, hearing a kind of juvenile roar. Oh, that was just Bonington, said Liz. The cat, said Lucy. It has a most unusual purr, said Bernard. It varies, said Liz. Anyway, you have some news for us, I hope? Yes. Bernard brought his hands together, beating them softly on the table. Your neighbour Henry Bacon is still recovering. He was taken to the local hospital in Dunlogan, officially suffering from mild amnesia. I think you can expect him home in a few days. Went Lucy, blowing back her fringe. This gave her a that will do look. And Arthur, she said with a tentative gulp. On the telephone you said he was unwell? Bernard lowered his head. May I speak freely? Liz looked at Lucy and nodded. Arthur, the man I know as Brother Vincent, is changed. This being, this Fane, damaged his mind. Your dragon Gretel achieved some remarkable results, but Arthur's journey to recovery will be long and may not have a conclusive ending. And there is something further you should know. Go on, Liz said, drawing a tissue from a box. He is almost blind. Blind? Said Lucy, dropping her jaw. So he won't recognize Mom anymore? Or see me, ever? Liz sank into a chair. I'm sorry to be the bearer of this news, said Bernard, resting a comforting hand on hers. We will care for him, of course, but... No, said Lucy. He's gotta come here. Lucy? Her mother choked back a sob. I want to meet him, Mom. That's not our decision. We can help him, Lucy said to Bernard. If I ask him to, will he leave the island? Bernard sat back and dropped his hand on his stomach. He paused a moment, praying for guidance. It was his intent to return to your mother. There! Lucy said triumphantly. Her mother's mouthed, Stop it. Lucy, this is complicated, she said. In the birdcage, Snigger did a little twirl. We should take him to the library gardens, said Lucy. Arthur should be there when we let Snigger go. There was a pause. Bernard stirred his tea. What of David? He inquired, switching the subject. His departure from the island was nothing short of miraculous. Between them, he and Arthur have turned the laws of physics on their head. Did he reach the far north? What happened exactly? And now it was Lucy fighting back the tears. Is he safe? Asked Bernard, worried for her. David did what he had to do, Liz said. He's still in the north. He may be there for some time. At that moment, there was a brrr from the hole, and Bonington padded in. Ah, said Bernard, grateful for some light relief. He turned to greet the cat, but jumped back and almost fell off his chair. That's, he waggled a finger at it. Lucy looked down. A tiger, she said. Oh, cool, he's grown those saber teeth, Mom. Bernard gasped in astonishment at Liz. I did warn you Bonington was different, she said. Scrubly Library Gardens, February the 29th. Come on, said Liz. We've been through all this once before, and it's even colder now than it was last time. Just open the cage and let him go. That is one well-traveled squirrel, said Zana. Why didn't you just let him loose in your garden? I did, said Lucy, but he wanted to come here. When you were ready. Mom, did you bring the food? Yes, she sighed. Here's his commission for helping David with the Nut Beast story. She threw Lucy a plastic bag filled with peanuts. Xana blew into a tissue and laughed. You okay? Liz asked her, stroking her shoulder. Xana closed her eyes and nodded. It's fitting, said a voice, that the story should return to the place it began. Liz patted Xana's arm and walked the short distance along the path to where Arthur was sitting on a low stone wall, listening to the rustle of the leafless trees. He reached for Liz's hand. She took his, knelt with it, and kissed his fingers. David is with us in spirit, he said. He's with us in a bit more than that, said Xana. He's with us in a bit more than that, said Xana. Liz threw her a questioning look. I'm having his baby, she said. Oh my goodness, said Liz, drawing in such a gulp of air that birds deserted the surrounding trees. His baby? Gasped Lucy, standing up at once. You're going to have... She stared in awe at Xana's tummy. Oh, Xana, Liz cried, and threw her arms around her. When did you know? This morning, she sniffed and gave a quick shrug. Come on, guys, it's just a baby. It's David's child, Arthur said, smiling. And Gwendolyn's, Liz whispered, touching Xana's cheek. Xana sniffed again and looked down at her feet. We're gonna let the squirrel go, or what? Liz took her hands and rocked them proudly. You're going to need help. I want you to come and live with us, okay? Xana's pale face twitched into a frown. Kinda crowded, she said, struggling to talk. Us four, the dragons, and a crazy leopard, or whatever he's transmogrified into this morning? We'll talk about this later, Liz said happily. She squeezed Xana's hand and turned back to Lucy. Oh, there's one other thing, Xana said. Liz and Lucy gave her their attention again. Gazooks gave me a note this morning. She pulled a tissue from her sleeve and clamped it in her fist. It said Glant. It's the name of my Valentine's dragon. He said the name would come to me. He wrote to me, Liz. Liz took her in her arms and hugged her tight. It's not over, she whispered. Not by a long way. And she glanced at Arthur and signaled to Lucy. And Lucy let the squirrel go. Until the stars have blinked their last, wherever on this earth you walk, he will arouse, excite, inspire, my Valentine, my one dark fire. And that is actually the book. FireStar is done. It's finished. David is gone. Oh no, David is gone, which means now we will have to read the next book. I don't know if David will come back or he's permanently dead. I do not know.